Now, I'll read a brief chalice lighting. This has been a very busy week for me. Obviously I should do this more often, so I'm a little bit more comfortable. But I have the guy that knows the way, so. Brief chalice lighting. We gather here within these walls, hallowed by the community that has gathered here over the centuries. Countless hands have tended the flame of fellowship, and countless more will keep the flame burning. And as we light the chalice flame today, let us not hide our light under a bushel, but be a beacon of hope to all around us. Now we have some of the cutest chalice lighters that you'll ever see, and I'd like to invite them up to light the chalice and to respond.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the Church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the Church of the Open Mind. This is the Church of the Loving Heart, where friends come together and share.
Readings, an excerpt from the Maypole of Marymount by Nathan Hawthorne. Bright were the days at Marymount, when the Maypole was the banner of that colony. They who prepared it, should their banner be triumphant, were to pour sunshine over New England's rugged hills and scatter flower seeds throughout the soil. Jollity and Gloom were contending for an empire, and May, of her mirthful spirit, dwell all the year round at Marymount, sporting with the summer months, and reveling with autumn, and basking in the glow of winter's fireside. Through a whirl of toil and care, May come hither to find a home among the lightsome hearts of Marymount. Immediately a prelude of pipe and drums and fiddle began to play from a neighboring thicket in such a mirthful cadence. Through the boughs of the maypole danced to the sound. Reading number 2, Weaving Our We by Carol B. Bell. Since that parting at the start from our safest home and anchor, we yearn for belonging. It soothes and inspires us to begin our necessary launch to living. Holding fast at first, then tentative to our new shores of connection, we began our dance of holding to those like us who are seeking their own delicate balance to life. With every fiber of our spirit, we struggle to become able to be alone. Yet part of those who help us know our emerging selves. They mostly look like us, sound like us, and we become like them. We are so satisfied with this way of being until the day that some new presence shows up, and we start to feel the pull to be with the new discovery. Though different, we bask in it. It makes us laugh and feel good, and reluctant to leave. Call it neighbor, friend, teacher, or just community. Now, this is something new, is a necessary part of our happiness. So our lifelong community of others begins to add to our anchoring. our tending of self and our expanded self called we. Yes, we sense the difference from those first ones, the ones we once needed so much, called family. Once taken for granted, now we fear the risk of losing either one or the other. So we learn this ritual of dance, of catching spirits, adding them over and over to our we. And we grow better and better at this graceful effort. The new ones pull us, push, shape us, helping us define us. This scares us but also propels us, helping to anchor us, find our center, test our bonds of connections, belonging. We lose some along the way, yet we continue the dance, ever searching and collecting the ones for our we. Some stay, some leave, some melt within us, to us. Absent-minded, automatic, like breathing sometimes, but also intentional, like a patient weaver. We hold that common thread while adding color patterns to loop together in the makings of our unique design for life. Oh, but we are not always careful to make sure that the design and structures can tolerate contrast, resistance, unexpected, and compelling sweet distractions. For these in the end make our lives more fulfilling, satisfying, and worth the living.
Jollity and Gloom were contending for an empire, wrote Nathaniel Hawthorne. It was a cultural debate filled with allegory and imagery around the morality of experiencing joy in life and happiness amongst the harshness of Puritanism in the mid-1600s. He wrote this short story in the mid-1800s. Two things seemingly opposite, contending for an empire. That could be said about so many things, about joy and sorrow, about hope and despair, always contending, always seeming to want to take hold of all of our attention or energy, to be one or the other, either or. How often you're pulled into either or thinking or experiences in this world. We're rarely encouraged to feel more than one thing at a time. One moment we feel rooted in one happiness or grief, and then a second later, something in the world reminds us of the other side, and we're pulled back to the other and back to the other again. It doesn't take long, though, to remember that our hearts, our souls, our world are not neatly parsed out into categorical containers. These many feelings, these many ways of being, joy, happiness, despair, sadness, hope, love, they're much less like Tupperware containers neatly packed. They're much more like a lava lamp, or cotton candy, or taffy, or different grains of sand of different colors being poured into the same container together, and then you try to draw them back apart. It's impossible. We are made in the double helix of our DNA to be woven together in spirals, to have more than one feeling or experience all the time. I wonder if you've ever been flipping through or scrolling through something, maybe scrolling through social media or flipping through a pile of magazines or newspapers, this random assortment of stories, and you notice how random things are in life or in that scroll, how tangled up the world is. One story is about the crisis of climate change, and then you have a video of fuzzy kittens, and it's almost like this litany of humanity that you scroll through gives a sense of the wide diversity of the world with no sense of order. There's a story of loss and violence, followed by an update from a family picnic, followed by the Mueller report, followed by the weather, followed by famine or war, followed by some upcoming art exhibit or community forum, and then again you're back to the fuzzy kittens and the puppies and the babies. The stories of our world are all mixed together, which can make it hard to know which ones are important, which ones should take our attention. Or as E.B. White writes, I rise in the morning torn between a desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. Torn between a desire to improve the world and a desire to enjoy the world. Then he says, this makes it hard to plan the day. The world seems to pull at us, almost through emotional or ethical whiplash all the time. Little room to breathe between joy or grief, little room to be alive and be between hope and despair. Life can be tangled. And most of the time, I believe we're always somewhere in between. Somewhere between jollity and gloom, somewhere between joy and woe, somewhere between finding community in the familiar and the comfortable, and finding community in new, expanding understandings of we. Somewhere between where we have been and where we're going, somewhere here in between the earth and the stars, the ancestors and our descendants, and we take hold of whatever bright strand we have woven and wrapped with all the others, and we bend and bow to those around us, noticing how together we are beautifully, brokenly bound as community. The poet Carol Babel, whose words George read to us, remind us that like the dance around the maypole, we always begin in this world with some sort of separation from difference. We begin in this world at what she calls our safest home and anchor. Yearning for belonging, we become like our surroundings. Often we know and prefer people and experiences that are just like ours. There is importance in this. There can be deep community and power and resilience, strength, connection, belonging in being part of a close-knit and closely identified community. In fact, at times it saves lives. To have some place of deep affirmation and acceptance. This may be especially true for marginalized and oppressed communities where a sense of identity and connection is a way to show up in the world with less fear, less loneliness, less isolation, and show up with deeper and more sustaining power. And at the same time, we're always encountering something new in this world, some new perspective, some new culture or teaching or practice or music or identity or experience, always running into something or someone's new that draw us in. It's in these moments that the spiritual life calls us into our theme for the month of May, curiosity, to stay open and curious. Not only in learning about something new or different outside of oneself, but also at the same time learning more about ourselves in the process of how we greet and interact with difference, how we engage with something other than what we've known before, how we maintain and work on our own capacity to change and to shift and to grow. Curiosity is about how we greet the world that is outside of our own small world. And Carol Babel says, call it neighbor, teacher, friend, or just community. This something new becomes a needed part of your happiness now. It's like taking a hold of some new ribbon, taking a hold of your own strong, bright sense of identity and history. And then we learn this ritual, she says, this dance of catching spirits. These new spirits pull us, push us, shape us. They help define us. And that scares us, but it also propels us, helping us to find some new anchor and center. And then she writes this critically important reminder. But we are always not careful, she says, to make sure that the design, the structure, can tolerate contrast and resistance, unexpected and compelling distractions, she says. Somewhere between jollity and gloom, there is a reality that we are woven together in this world, threaded together in community, chosen or otherwise, and we're not always careful. We're not always attending to those around us and the impacts we have. We're not always attending to or mindful of the strength or the give or the structure and the hold of how our lives are woven together. Because the whole point and hope of the maypole, at least in our tradition here, is to hold the truth that we are woven together in life, and that our lives impact each other, and all of the strands are bright and beautiful and they are more beautiful when they are bound together. Whether you have done the maypole here for decades, or if you're just about to do it for the first time this morning, you may know, or you need to know, this can be a contact sport. We weave our ribbons, and you kind of have to bob and weave a little bit. You have to bow and bend to each other around you in the circle of life, naming and noticing different heights and abilities. Some of us of certain statures need to not unintentionally shatter other people, little ones around us. Careful not to run into each other, careful not to trample anyone, careful to help each other. Otherwise, it becomes quite quickly what we call, technically, just a hot mess. Instead of a weave, it can quickly become a tangled web. Weaves can be a little messy, and that's okay. But to just be tangled is something else. And when things get tangled, sometimes we need the voice of a young child say, "No, you're doing it wrong." Or maybe they'll say, "Here, let's try it like this," a more positive tone. Because we need, in the words of activist Bayard Rustin in the civil rights movement, in every community we need a group of angelic troublemakers. I love that title. Angelic troublemakers. Maybe a great name for our religious education program for children or youth. Maybe it's a term we should use when we bless babies in their child dedications. It's a creative tension that's named here, that comes when we attend to the difference and the diversity within the communities we weave together. Angelic troublemakers are the ones who help create the type of tension that is needed. I want you to try to imagine trying to do a weave on a maypole, trying to weave together these ribbons, if there's not any tension in the ribbon, if it's just blowing in the wind. It would just be flying around, nothing to hold it, nothing to catch it together. To be an angelic troublemaker is to name and notice when the threads are too loose, or if they are too tight and there's no give to allow for space for others. To name and notice and speak out and act out when we need to attend to each other and hold our identities and hold our presence with someone other than us in better ways. Angelic troublemakers are like the refs of the maypole spiritual ritual, but even more so, they're like prophets in our larger world. Those that are willing to agitate the status quo and in so doing still embody joy and beauty and hope and laughter right in the midst of tension. That's the struggle of life and one of the most important callings in life, to be able to find the joy and the beauty in the midst of tension and struggle. When we take hold of our ribbon and we remember that community must have some creative tension, somewhere between deep despair for the world and a sense of false optimism that everything's going to be okay, we live and breathe in the middle. We bend and bow and weave together a community that can find that beauty. Bayard Rustin also said, "Be able to laugh at yourself first. Only then will you have perspective in that middle ground between tears and laughter in which you will need to work for many years." He said, "I'm able to laugh with others because I can laugh at myself." What an important perspective for a civil rights activist to hold. Isn't it curious that we seem to always be in that place between tears and laughter in this world? Isn't it curious that it takes time and it takes a little disruption sometimes to notice and pay attention to how things aren't working in our lives in this world, how we aren't weaving together something that will hold us, and we need a little agitation to wake us up to something better. It's like Frederick Douglass, who said, "Those who profess to favor freedom yet depreciate agitation are people who want crops without plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the roar of its many waters." Isn't it curious that after it seems that the food will surely run out and the sun has gone away and the cold, deep cold is setting in, that joy itself has almost vanished? Somewhere in humanity, somewhere in the natural world, somewhere in the heart of life, someone has been storing up words of hope and possibility, images of color and light and beauty, reminding us that we have storehouses of hope. We have boxes of ribbon. I can attend to that in the RE wing. We have boxes of ribbon. We have light and beauty and color because there is a place like a river of peace that is strong enough and beautiful enough to hold us all. And if we hold the tension just right and we pay attention to those around us, we find that middle ground between tears and laughter, jollity and gloom, and that's an okay place to be, where there is strong earth beneath us and we can still look up to the sky and see the bright possibility of who we can be together, because we need all the colors, we need all the feelings, we need all of our humanity, we need all of us together with enough tension and enough intention to be here, in between, and to find beauty in that. Our hymn is De Coloris, number 305. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing together. I invite you, as you're comfortable, to join a hand next to you or place your hand over your heart and breathe deep the breath of life. If the weave is too loose, it just falls apart and can't hold anyone. And if the weave is too tight, there isn't room enough for us to breathe and to be. We need all of the colors, and we need all the people taking their place in the sun. May it be so. Amen.